Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. I just wanted to make a second video on what makes a poor built 1911 versus what makes a well built 1911 or 2011. And we're going to talk more about the moving parts. Last time we talked about in part one, we talked more about the aesthetics and just by the look and feel of the gun, not by actually what the gun does when you're utilizing the controls and things like that. So there's some things that we can look for on the controls and the way the gun handles and feels when you rack the slide and things like that and run the safety. So we're going to talk about that some today. Like we mentioned in the first video also, that the price tag doesn't always reflect what you're going to see. And I'll tell you what, also, just to mention quickly, no matter how much you spend on a 2011 or 1911, you're probably not going to find one that has all these things flawless. It's just part of it. It's a human-built machine. It's a human-built tool. And there's always going to be something that could be slightly improved. Even if you buy an Infinity, a $10,000, $12,000 custom Infinity, there's probably going to be something somewhere that could be slightly better. That's just the way it goes. But when you get up in price, usually you get a little bit closer. But that's not always the case. Sometimes you can find a really good 1911 with very few flaws for under $1,500, under $1,000. But you're usually going to see more so when you go budget route, okay? But anyway, it doesn't always reflect the quality by the price tag, although you sometimes do see that. It may not always be the case. All right, let's get into this. First, we're going to talk about looking at the front or the top of the gun. We're going to talk about the slide and how the slide manipulates, how it feels in the hand when you rack it. It should not feel like you got sandpaper in between the slide and the frame. It should feel like it's rolling on wheels or on glass. It should be tight. There should be no wobble or wiggle or any kind of grit when you do that. That's how you can tell in that regard if you've got a quality 1911 or 2011. All right, let's move on toward the back, and we'll talk some about the hammer a little bit. This will kind of have to do with the trigger as well. But the hammer, you want it to click when you pull the hammer back. You want it to kind of click firmly, and you want it to be a real smooth motion. It shouldn't be gritty when you pull the hammer back. It should be smooth. And you don't want any kind of wobble in the hammer when it's back. It should be pretty firm and secure. There shouldn't be a lot of movement in the hammer. It's going to move a little bit because it's supposed to go back further than what it actually locks at, because if it didn't, it wouldn't be reliable. But there shouldn't be wiggle side to side, and it should be a real smooth hammer action when you pull the hammer back, okay? Also, the machining, we talked about it before, the machining of the hammer is also important as well as far as seeing if you got a quality 1911. All right, guys, let's move on to the safety. The safety, to see if you got a good quality 1911, 2011, the safety should lock up. Okay, I've got the hammer forward. When the hammer's back, that's the only way the safety will actually come on. So when the hammer's back, the safety should lock to full safe, and it should click down to safety off, and it should kind of lock firmly in those positions. So when it's in this position, you shouldn't be able to move that safety up and down when it's in this position easily. Now, of course, if you push with enough force, it's going to move, okay? Now, you just saw that. So if you push with enough force, it's going to move. But you shouldn't be able to just barely jiggle it and it move around, okay? It should be firmly locked into place. Same way when it's down. You shouldn't be able to, if you just move the gun like this, it's not moving. Now, if I press kind of firmly, of course, it's going to start moving. But, yeah, you want it to kind of lock into place. So that's one way that you can tell that the safety is well put together. Another thing to talk about, which we'll talk about on all the controls, is you want it to be able to go safety on and safety off with just the right amount of force. This shouldn't be too light, but it shouldn't be too firm either, because either way it can cause malfunctions and problems when you're shooting the gun on a regular basis. So you want it to be just the right weight of force to turn the safety on and turn the safety off. So that's important. All right, coming into other parts, moving parts, let's talk about the mag release. The mag release should be pretty firm. It shouldn't be wobbly. Also, the same way we talked about the safety, the mag release should be firm enough to push, but not so firm that you're going to have a hard time dropping that mag. So it has to have the right balance of weight. When you press the mag release, it shouldn't be gritty. It should be pretty smooth. The press, you should be able to press this in without it kind of hanging up. It should be very smooth when it goes in and out. And most 1911s are going to get a little better when you run it. It's not going to be perfect out of the box, but even out of the box, it should be fairly easy to press that button without it hanging up or being gritty when you're pressing it. That's a good way to tell if the 1911 is quality. Let me go back to this because I noticed something on this earlier. So this is a cheaper gun, and I was going to show you. You see how I just barely touched that and it moved? That's what I was talking about with that safety. That shows that this gun is a little bit cheaper, and it should be. This is quite a bit cheaper gun than that other gun, but I'm just showing you kind of what you can look for. I'm just barely touching that. I'm not putting hardly any force, and it's moving. That probably won't hurt. I mean, this gun, I probably could shoot it all the time and hardly have any problems, but it just shows that the lack of craftsmanship and touch on this gun that you kind of get with these higher end guns. Okay, so that was a good example I wanted to show you. But yeah, the mag release should be smooth. They're all going to be different in weight as far as how much weight it takes to press. This one is actually a little too firm, and I'll say that's one reason why. And it's a little bit gritty when you press it, but this is a GI model, so it's kind of to be expected. But yeah, the weight that it takes to push this is a little bit stiff, and it has a little bit of grit to it when you press it. Nothing that's going to affect you too bad. It's plenty manageable, but it is a difference in the quality that you get from this to that higher end gun. So that's another factor to think about. Let's go to trigger. Okay guys, when we're talking about trigger, what you want is, you don't want this to move around a lot, side to side or up or down, right? It's going to move a tad bit because it does move in and out, and it has to have a little bit of room to do that without it locking up. If it's so tight that you can't even move it at all, then sometimes it might be so tight that it's going to want to hang up when you try to pull the trigger or add more weight to your trigger. You do not want that. So it don't have to be completely super snug in there, but you'd want as little movement as possible without it rattling around in the place where it sets. Okay, so also with the trigger, you can test this: how much pre-travel and over-travel. Now, some of these triggers are adjustable. A lot of them are. Most of them are, as far as over-travel, but it's a little harder to get rid of the pre-travel. And you do want, I will say this too, if you get a trigger that has no pre-travel, that's all the pre-travel you get with this trigger. But if you get a trigger with no pre-travel, sometimes you'll find out that it may be a bad thing, because if you need a little pre-travel in these triggers, because if you don't have any, then sometimes when you're shooting a gun and you try to reset the trigger during shooting, if there's not a little bit of wiggle room there, sometimes the gun will not reset and you'll have a dead trigger. So that's why almost every 1911 has a little bit of pre-travel on the trigger, is because that allows the gun to reset consistently every time when you're shooting at fast speeds, and that's what you want. So you could probably get rid of a little bit of this pre-travel, but you wouldn't want to get rid of much more than that, just so you understand. But when you get to that wall, you want a firm wall, and then you want a non-gritty. You don't want this travel to be gritty either. So you want a very smooth break with very little over travel. So as you can see here, guys, let's see if I pull this and I rack the slide. Watch this reset. So there's very little room. There's hardly any over travel. There's very little pre-travel. That's what you want in a quality 1911. So that's just something to think about. But also, guys, let's go on to the slide release. So you want a slide release. For one thing, you want a slide release that is easy to manipulate, but not without any sharp edges. You want it to be able to press it and the slide to drop fairly easy. You want to be able to lock it open fairly easy. You want to make sure that the slide release is not locking open while you're shooting, because that could be a poorly fit slide release. So guys, I don't make this video too long, but these are some things to look for when you're shopping for a new or used 2011, and so that you can see if it's poorly put together or well put together. And yeah, guys, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Please like and subscribe. And check out the other video, part 1 of this, where we talk more about just the stuff that's stationary on these guns. And we did miss certain things on this video and the last one, but we did cover most of the basics. And if you have any more questions or more details you would like to ask, please leave that below and I'll try to answer them the best that I can. I'm not a gun, I wouldn't say I'm a gun expert, but I think I'm getting pretty close to that in the sense of understanding these weapons. Am I the best shooter? No, but I think I'm slightly above average, so I can, as a part-time, what I would call myself, amateur gunsmith, and learning hands-on with the guns and understanding them, taking all these, I've taken many guns like these all the way apart, so I understand them very well. I've done a lot of work to them, so I do understand each one of these guns and guns like this, so I think I can give a pretty expert opinion on kind of what to look for. But anyway, please check out the channel, check out the other videos. Please like and subscribe. God bless. Have a great day.